Welcome everyone to our meeting of the Planning and Development Committees for January 14th, 2019. All members of committee are present today except Mayor Brown, who is currently involved in the Cannabis Teletown Hall. So certainly he would have been here today. I remind everyone at today's meeting to ensure all cell phones and other electronic devices are turned off or placed on non-audible mode during the meeting. Members of committee, there are a few agenda changes identified on the package in front of you. I will ask the city clerk to review the changes for today's agenda since its publication last Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of committee, members of staff, and the public in attendance tonight. These are the changes for this evening's agenda. Regarding item 4.1, which is a statutory public notice item, the city initiated an amendment to the zoning bylaw to limit the maximum occupancy load at the Culsa Community School at 69 Maitland Street in Ward 7. There is additional correspondence filed tonight from Peter Riley, President, Peel Condominium Corporation, 147. There is a correspondence from a Brampton resident whose name has been asked to be withheld. And there is correspondence from Michael Cara, Associate Overland LLP. In regard to item 7.3 on this evening's agenda, an application to amend the zoning bylaw, Canif Properties Limited, Glenn Schnarr and Associates, to permit prestige industrial office and ancillary uses north of Highway 407 and west of Financial Drive in Ward 6. There is an Appendix 1, which is proposed zoning bylaw amendment, which I believe was not published with the agenda. Regarding item 7.4, a report in regard to an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw, Brar Gurdurshan Candevcon Limited, to permit the development of 15 townhouses at 10764 Bramalea Road in Ward 9. There was a revised staff report that was issued last Friday and was posted to the city's website and provided electronically through email to the members of council. And then finally, in regard to item 7.6 on this evening's agenda, an application to amend the zoning bylaw and proposed draft plan of subdivision, SKS Countryside Land Holdings, GWD Limited, to permit the development of 38 street town house dwellings and 3 part blocks that are to be developed for townhomes. East of Torbram Road, north of Countryside Drive in Ward 10, there is a replacement page to the staff report, and it's replacement page 7.611, and it is in regard to Appendix 1. Those are the changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, City Clerk. Are there any other additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda? Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, through the chair. We're not on the consent, I guess. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fortini. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting? Moved by Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Nope. Consent agenda. Members of council, members of committee, the items listed with an asterisk on the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. The consent motion is to adopt the matter on today's agenda without the need for a separate discussion on the item, unless a member requests a separate discussion. Does any member wish to add an item or remove an item from the consent motion on the agenda? Councillor Fortini?
Thank you, through the chair. I was going to put 7.6 in consent, if it's okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, if the will of committee is to add 7.6 to consent, staff have advised there's an additional recommendation to be considered. I think there were 3 listed in the staff report. There's a 4th in regard to a subdivision agreement, and I will pull that up on the screen if it's the will of committee. We can actually right there. So the added recommendation that was just missed in the staff report is number 4 in red, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a subdivision agreement in accordance with the implementation of the conditions of approval of draft plan of subdivision 21T-12019B. If
there's any, no one opposed?
So we can add it to consent with that change.
So add it to consent with that change. All in favor? Okay, moved. Thank you. Also, members of committee, we have an added recommendation for consent item 7.1. Do you have that to bring up? Okay.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is a similar additional recommendation 4, which is on the screen. And the added recommendation 4 would be that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a subdivision agreement in accordance with the implementation of the conditions of approval of draft plan of subdivision of 21T-15005B.
Okay, moved by Councillor Palashi. All in favor? Carried. And may I have a final motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting? Moved by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So just to remind everyone in the audience today, this is a public meeting of the Planning Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at the public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. The intent of this public meeting is to hear submissions from the applicant and public regarding these proposals. Members of the committee may ask questions for clarification, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city also has posted its website, supporting information, documentation for all these current development applications for public review and reference. We will now proceed to consider the item on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. So our first item, item 4.1. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from city staff regarding this proposal and would like to come forward to provide public input on this item? Okay, so let the record show no one. Oh, is there someone? Okay, please come forward.
Good evening. We are the solicitors for Calsa Community School, being the owner of the property municipally known as 69 Maitland Street. You may have received a letter that we filed on record it was filed earlier today, just prior to this meeting. I'm going to give just some preliminary background. By way of background, the Calsa Community School project was the subject of an Ontario Municipal Board proceeding, which resulted in mediation between the City of Brampton and the Calsa Community School. The mediation was led and assisted by the Ontario Municipal Board and resulted in minutes of settlement being entered into by the parties. As part of the minutes of settlement, the Calsa Community School agreed to support this proposed amendment, which is about to be spoken to on the agenda, to implement revisions that would regulate the maximum occupant load of the Calsa Community School. We've reviewed the proposed city-initiated zoning bylaw amendment, as well as the information report prepared by the City of Brampton, dated December 20th, 2018, and we are attending today just to advise that on behalf of our clients, the Calsa Community School, we are fully in support of the city-initiated zoning bylaw amendment being proposed.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Fortini.
Mine's for staff.
Okay. So no one have questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Fortini for staff.
Yeah, thank you. For staff. I remember way back to one of the problems we had with this parking. I don't see when all this happens. We're going to be putting the no parking signs for the residents and around the streets there once this is all finished.
Through you, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Fortini. I can't speak to the no parking signs on the local roads around the school. What I can advise on is that through the decision that was rendered by the Ontario Municipal Board, just prior to it being deemed, referred to as LPAT, Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, the decision was that site plan approval would be in effect for the subject site. And that site plan approval identified various improvements that would occur on the site, including the addition of driveways, both for bus drop-off and parent drop-off as well. So I can speak to the fact that the Ontario Municipal Board matter as it relates to the site plan approval, which has all concluded, identified a number of physical improvements that are to ultimately occur on the subject site. And so the matter that really is with committee at this point in time for a public meeting implements a change to the zoning bylaw to include a maximum occupancy load for the subject school. And that was part of a minutes of settlement for the OMB matter. And so it's really implementing an element that the board and the applicant and the city had approved at that point in time.
I think there was, sorry, through the chair, there was what, 404 parking spots now? They'll be on the property, so they'll eliminate off the road? Is that, am I correct? I think John knows.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the exact, I believe Councillor Fortini is referring to the site layout that is basically splitting or taking traffic off of the public street and putting it onto the site. As I say, I don't have the exact numbers, but there is and you can see from the drawings attached to the report, there is a substantial queuing area that has been or is being built along the back of the property, specifically for pick up and drop off by parents, so like a kiss and ride equivalent. And as I say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the numbers that you're quoting, I don't think are that far off. It is substantial across the back.
Okay. And the expiry date, I think it's September this year, 2019, they have to be finished?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the information in terms of the permits that they've pulled. I know that they're making efforts to try to move this as quickly as possible. I think that they've completed certainly a substantial amount of work to date, but there's still more to be done. I think they've done partially some of the work that would take the buses off of the street, but the parent section of the kiss and ride or the drop off hasn't been completed yet, and I don't
Okay,
have the date
great,
for that.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Are there any members of the public that would like to delegate on this item? No? Would city staff like to make any further remarks?
Through you, Mr. Chair, city staff are prepared to make a presentation if council would wish, just on the background of the matter. But otherwise, there's no particular remarks that we'd be offering.
So members of committee, at your will? No? Okay, so can I get a motion then to receive the delegation? Moved by, in the staff report, moved by Councillor Fortini, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Our next item is item 4.2. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? Please come forward and provide public input on this item. Is there anyone? Going once, twice, okay, thank you. Let the record show that no one attending the statutory public meeting requested an applicant submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Do any members of do any members of committee have any questions for city staff? No. Can I have a motion to approve the staff report? Moved by Councillor Singh. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We will now proceed with item 4.1. Oh, for item 4.1? 4.2. Does the applicant want to make a presentation regarding item 4.2? Yes, please come forward.
If one's requested, I could make one. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Jace, would you like? Yeah?
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
Nobody's requesting it? Okay. That's fine. Thank you very much.
So you're done that portion?
Yep.
Go back to the regular annotated agenda?
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to point out, when committee dealt with, sorry, there's somebody.
we have, we're speaking to it now? You were asked to. Okay. Well, it's not very clear. So, I think we should speak a little bit louder because we're having trouble hearing and articulating exactly what it is that is coming up for review. So in that regard, I think if we were a little bit.
Which item are you interested in delegating
The
on?
current 4.2.
4.2?
Yes.
Okay. Please, go ahead.
So,
So for the public record, can you state your, sir?
So through you, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, so we're going to now hear public delegations on 4.2. There's been a request, whether or not the applicant wishes to make a presentation, and nobody has said they wish to hear a presentation. There's been a request whether staff were to do a presentation, and I believe nobody wants to hear a presentation on that. Or does committee and the public want to hear those presentations before making their delegations?
so no one's doing a presentation on this?
Well, we're asking you, is there any interest that you'd like to see the presentations?
We'd like to see the presentations, yes.
Okay. So I would invite the applicant to come forward and do a presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Then this evening, we have a proposal submission by Eric Mertzu of KevCon Limited, followed by staff presentation by Bindu Shah, Development Planner. Welcome, Eric.
Okay. Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Eric Marutsu from KenDevCon Limited. We are the agents here on behalf of the owner at 10230 Goreway Drive, which is located north of Castlemore Road and on the west side of Goreway Drive. We've submitted applications to amend the zoning bylaw and draft plan of subdivision to the City of Brampton in order to permit future residential development. This site specifically has an area of about 10 acres. The current access is from Goreway Drive, and the site is currently vacant. However, there was previously a residence on that land some time ago. The property is surrounded by existing subdivisions to both the north and the south. Goreway Drive to the east, and beyond which are estate residential lots, and a valley to the rear of the property, which is at the west. Let's see here, sorry. Okay. So what we're proposing is a development that comprises of 20 single detached lots ranging from 45 feet to 60 feet in lot width. There's a future residential block as well to the south, which would be developed, I guess, in conjunction with the landowner to the south at some point in the future. There is a park block also located to the northeast corner of the site that will function, I guess, concurrently, or sorry, I guess together with the existing park block. And there's valley land and open space buffer blocks to the rear of the subdivision. Future access for the site will be provided by the extension of Valley West Road, which would connect to the north and south subdivisions. The proposal for these lands is similar, provides similar type housing as the previously registered plans to the north and south, and is consistent with the city's secondary plan. I will now invite Bindu Shah to talk about the planning process and background of this file.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Bindu Shah, and I'm the development planner responsible for managing this application. Eric from KenDevCon has already explained the proposal. From our perspective, I'm going to look at. Hi, yes, I'm going to go back to the context a bit here. So this slide shows the land use typologies around this site. So if you see, there is valley land, there is medium density residential, which is shown in red, and on the around this site to the linear to the north and south is executive residential, and on the other side to the east of Goreway Drive is estate residential lots type of housing. This is an aerial image. You see the remnants of the house that was burned, a single detached dwelling on this property. And if you look to the north and south, the two cul-de-sacs will be connected by the internal road proposed for this development. Basically, this is a proposal for rezoning and a plan of subdivision. And so the zoning right now is agriculture and floodplain. So that's going to be changed. This is official plan designation and shows residential and open space, and it falls under a special policy area for executive housing. So lots are meant to be a certain minimum dimension and larger lots than the normal medium housing. This is an amendment is not required to this. The secondary plan, it's designated executive residential and valley land in the Vales of Castlemore Secondary Plan Area 42. There is a parquet designation that also applies to a small portion of the lands, and an amendment is not required. The zoning bylaw says designates this as agricultural partly, and part of it is floodplain zone. And so we are going to be amending only the portion that is designated as agricultural, and no amendment is required for the floodplain zone. These are some views of the particular site. This is a view from looking towards the south. So you can see the two neighborhoods, just the subdivisions to the north and the south. There's a view looking north. You can see the house that was previously there. Again, view towards east, and view looking south. And technical review is ongoing, and we will come back with a recommendation report. But some considerations so far that have been identified are that we need to figure out the limits of development along the valley lands. We need to designate and zone the natural features and buffer areas into proper categories to protect the valley lands and conserve it. And we have to determine the right-of-way dedication for the widening of the Goreway Drive. And these are just a few of the considerations. There is detailed review going on at the moment. The executive housing styles to the north and south of the property are shown on the left side of this slide, and the applicant is proposing similar styles, which are shown on the right. Those will come about in the detailed plans. The next steps are we will receive comments from the public today. We will continue further technical review, and we will review for consistency with the higher order plans, and we will advance to a recommendation report in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's any interested persons, please come forward to provide public input on this proposal. First, please sign into the meeting delegation book on the table so the city can contact you regarding this proposal, including when the final staff recommendation report is presented to council. Please come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the public meeting record, and you will have 5 minutes to speak on this proposal. And I will just remind members of committee that you will have the opportunity to pose any questions after, either to the delegations or to city staff.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Gill Burns, and with the limited information that we received, I oppose to this development simply because there needs to be more homework done as to the planning of it. I live in a portion where we only have 100 houses on the lower end, and there's probably about another 1,000 homes above this development. There is no major park at all for anybody other than just a toddler parkette that you can see in that green area just above that. It's just a very small little park. And that basically supports about over, 1,500 homes. So it's not fair to the children or the community in the future. And also the fact that the lots are much smaller than the rest of the homes, so it affects our value of our home. So it needs to stay consistent with the current lots that we have, which are minimum of 60. So my lot is 70. And then there's other lots that are a little bit larger. So to have lots that are 45 is below our area. So I'd say those kinds of things need to be taken in consideration. And my predominant reason is that there's nothing to facilitate a real park. Where you see the yellow areas, those are much smaller lots. And originally, in the previous, I guess, government, they said that the city was going to purchase that land and develop it into at a later date as a park. But now, as we can see, that is not being done. So for that reason, I want to go on record opposing this development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jasmir Singh Grewal, 5 Valley West Road, Brampton. I'm there last 10 years, and I talked with the Honorable Mr. Superviary and Mr. Dillon about the situation in that area. Last 10 years, we are fighting with the city and about that park, and no house should be less than 50 feet. And that why the value of that house is, or my house or anybody's house, everybody want the same value. I call Mr. Dillon's office 3-4 times, nobody answer me. And we are fighting for more than 12 years. I have given a 50 signature to Mr. Superviary and Mr. Dillon. And they told us that time in the meeting that the city going to buy those 2 lots and there will be a big park. From Gorbe North, Castlemore to Gorbe for 400 houses, there is no park. There's no park at all. I don't know what we can do it. I object this, and we will fight for that. They promise us, I can call Mr. Superviary. He told that they're going to recommend to city, so they buy that lot to 2 lot, and then they will have a big lot. There's a gazebo or some sort of for city senior citizen, for ladies, for other. Nobody listen. I am fighting for last 10 years. Nobody listen. I don't know what is going on with the city.
Well,
And we pay that. There are 300 houses in that area. 300. They're big one. They pay taxes to the city too. How far we can go? Met me about that house, and no information city. Mr. Superviary retired, and Mr. Dillon, I called their office so many times. Nobody returned the call. How can I represent myself? So I object this objection, and we will come next time too with how many people. I will bring you the signature of all the houses there into your table. If you don't listen, we will fight up to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I can just assure you that city staff today, any comments made today, and I'm hearing of a park, that city staff will ensure that these comments are reflected in the report.
Sir, excuse me for a minute. I call city too so many times to manager assistant. I wrote an email.
Yeah.
They should check the email, my email, about this situation. Nobody returned any call.
Okay, it's so noted, and we'll ensure city staff will reach out, and I think the councilors also heard loud and clear. Are we allowed clarification, Peter, or you want the clarification, I guess, on what the gentleman said that he contacted the office? Should I just, does Councilor Dillon, can you give a rebuttal? Okay. Yeah, and yes, Councilor Dillon, just to remind you, you may ask clarification or a question of the delegation.
Just some clarification,
A question, is that you would like to?
well, yeah, question. I never made any, this is just for the record, I never made any promises that the city would buy any of the 2 lots. I'll
So this is
definitely-
not,
I'll
so just
definitely go
remind,
over-
excuse me, I would just remind members of council, you're allowed to ask for questions of
I
clarification.
understand, but I felt it important that I clarify.
I appreciate
something
that, and
Right.
I would suggest if you want to ask a question to the delegate, that's one
Right.
thing, or maybe offline, you might want to speak about some of what was said. Please, yes, thank you. State your name and address, please.
Good evening, my name is Jenny Gill, and I reside in that same area as the last 2 people. I live in 40 Pecan Drive, and I have the similar concern, so I will not repeat it. And I am just as passionate as these past 2 people. I also like to point out that in the last 10, 15 years, we have children playing, apart from talking about Children Park, I see a little green area. It's actually basically a joke. But if you look at it, these are growing families with larger homes. Not only larger homes, these are larger families. And also they have children ranging from young children right up to teens. And especially, it's come to my attention, especially young children and teens have no place to play either hockey or basketball. We need a huge area for basketball, something to keep them busy. These guys are playing in unsafe areas and on roads, never mind any courts. So again, that needs to be paid attention. And then you have all kinds of activities when these children don't have any energy to exert in their own local areas. Where should they be traveling? Far away. It's difficult for them. So in that sense, also in the future, because in the past we were told because our area is so small, you can't have a park. Well, now that 2 roads north and south will be connecting, that means it's a larger area. So that should actually allow them to have a park area because it will be a bigger community. And the last one is because children will be traveling on that road to schools back and forth, people also will be walking. And in that area, they could also require a shedded, what do you call, park where grandparents can sit from sun and the rain and watch their young children or their teens play in that area. And I think that will be a great area for people to come together and become a community rather than being segregated, creating more communication and keeping an eye watch on the community. I think that will be more like a neighborhood watch. I see more positivity in creating a park than more homes. If some homes have to be made, fine. But we would like to see a lot of that area allocated to the community useful, as we mentioned before. So please do keep that in consideration. I spoke to many parents also myself, and they're all on the same board, and they're all saying, we didn't get the letter, how come? And we're so passionate, they were even more passionate than I was. That's all I have to say. Please do reconsider. Do not leave this community with no voice. They do have a voice. They do have concern. They're just not here. And they do need, their children are just like your children. They need a place to exert their energy and have a respectable park rather than just putting a couple of metal benches. I travel around Brampton. It's a beautiful area. That area also needs a respectable park also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Okay, now members of council, members of committee, you have an opportunity to pose any clarifications. I see Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you to staff, just a question with regards to the placement of this property within the floodplain. So a large section of it, as we see on the screen, Block 3, cannot be built upon, but was part of the property beforehand when there was just the one home that was there. Now that we're having this development built there, Block 3, does that become city property now?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, through the Councillor Vicente, that's right. The area shown on the screen currently that's identified as Block 3, which is floodplain lands, those are lands that will be asked to be gratuitously conveyed to the city, so they will be in city's ownership with no payment provided. That's right.
Thank you, and through the chair to you, staff. Does the city envision, now that that block will fall under city property, does the city have plans, whether in the short term or the long term, to provide paths along the valley lands, which would provide recreational opportunity for the residents throughout the area, given that it seems that this parcel really was an obstacle to doing that in the past, but now that it becomes city property, what opportunities might there be there? And I don't know if we can go back, if we can go to the slide that shows the overall satellite view, I think Appendix 6. You could find Appendix 6 if possible. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So from this image here, now that that property falls under city ownership, what possibilities are there for this valley now, which I'm sure is absolutely stunning, to provide some trails and other opportunities for the local residents?
And so through you, Mr. Chair, and now with what's anticipated to become ownership of that valley portion, just upon the approval, potential approval of the matter at a future point in time, staff will be looking at exactly that matter, and in particular, we'll be speaking with our open space group to understand the opportunities that will exist for that valley corridor. And I can't confirm for a committee at this point in time as to what does exist from a pathway or passive recreation standpoint to the south or north, but knowing that this area will be coming into our ownership with a potential approval of the property, approval of the application, staff will be looking at exactly that, and we'll be reporting on that matter at a future point in time where we're going to be bringing a recommendation report through to committee.
Oh, sorry. Go back on.
I don't know if you can, there you go. So thank you, and I think that that is important, and it should be reflected in the record that this entire neighborhood, all of those subdivisions, and if we were to pull further out, we can't because it's a static image. There is incredible potential here for you and for all of the neighbors to really have something that is truly fantastic. Okay, and I think that that's important as you consider your willingness to support this project. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Fortini?
Thank you, through the chair. Just a quick question to staff. There was a number lot there, it was a number 11. It was in red. Why was that, or a different color, or in brown? Can't remember. Can't remember what slide it was on. We don't have any colors here. Yeah.
Sorry, Councilor Fortini, which page are you referring to on the agenda?
It showed all the property.
Showed the properties, there was a couple, and one was brown, one was red, and then they had the green, they showed the parquet. It doesn't show us on our map here in color. It just tells us, can barely read it.
Through Councilor Chair, on there was one deck, one slide within the slide deck that had
4.2.6.
Oh, they didn't make it in color.
But, no,
It was in color, yeah.
number,
You have this in color? It would
Sure.
be- yeah.
there was a colored one here, slide, that's what I'm trying to find.
So sorry, through to Mr. Chairman, there is one slide within the slide deck, and this is the slide.
That's the one. So number 11 there, it's a different color. What's there? What, there's nothing here.
Through the chair, that lot is just colored so that it shows that it doesn't meet the minimum lot width requirements. So it is 13.8 meters wide.
Okay, and if we look, second question is, we look at every end of every circle, there's like an area where actually you could walk into the park, and over here, it's like a dead-end street, you cannot get into the valley lands. every one, you have a catwalk or ends with a lot you could get in. This comes to a dead end. So no one could get through here to go into the Valley Lands. Is there
So-
any reason why this one isn't and all the rest are?
Through the chair, we have consulted with the TRCA, who's also looking at the limits of development there. There's a slope there, and the top of bank is not yet determined. So till that happens, we cannot for sure say that what's going to be the access point, if at all, to this to the Valley Lands from there. So the TRCA is working with us, with the applicant, to determine the top of bank for that.
And what's, last question through the chair, what's the closest parkette or park close to over here? How far? Because I don't see any on the map here. None around.
So, through the chair, the dots shown in green are parkette designations. The image is cropped, but towards the end of the image to the north, there is a designated neighborhood park. So there's various categories of parks. These are parkettes, whereas the one to the north is meant to be a neighborhood park.
Okay, thank you. I got my answer. You appreciate it. Thank you. I can't see nothing here.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. A question for staff, and I appreciate the pronunciation of my last name. It's very nice, very French. I had to work with the residents previously, a couple years ago, and they had some questions just to build off what Councillor Vicente was talking about, access to the trails in the back. And so when John Spencer was here, I'd sent him some questions in. One of the questions was, is there going to be to the south where Paper Birch and Valley West meet, there's a small vista. And the question the residents had at that time was, when will this connection from the Vista to Burroughs Hollow Trail commence, or if there's any plans of that? And Stafford replied that there's no plans for a trail connection to the valley. Since 2 years ago, and it was in October of 2016 when we were able to ask that question on behalf of the residents. Is there any plans since then? Do we foresee any type of trail connection from that point? So just to build off what Councillor Vicente was saying, I think it might be beneficial for the entire subdivision.
Yes, and through you, Mr. Chairman, Development Services staff, we're reliant on our open space staff to give us greater details with respect to the passive recreation or even potential active recreation opportunities within areas such as this. So really, that's a comment that we'll be looking to receive from that group as to what exists, what potential is there to improve going forward, and for us also to work with our engineers and the Conservation Authority to understand the topography, the slopes and such, the ability to potentially have any accesses of these types in this area. So these are all matters that staff will be looking to understand better just in advance of us coming back with a recommendation report to council. But yeah, these are items that we'll be looking at, informing you more on and responding to residents on at a later point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Singh.
Sure. Looking at access from Goreway, I guess the main entry point would be Paper Birch. Yeah, Paper Birch. So if I recall correctly, Goreway is a single lane, correct? Currently, one lane each way.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't confirm that just right now.
Because I'm 99% sure it's single lane. I'm getting nods, yep. So do we have an idea of when it would be widened? I think that might be important information.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff can't confirm really at this point in time what the capital improvements plan is for the widening of the road, but that's an item that we can include within our information coming back to you.
So yeah, so just for the record then, moving forward, if we can incorporate and keep that in mind in the report.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is a statutory public hearing, so
Sorry. Perfect.
this is the opportunity to hear from the public and not necessarily give direction implied or explicitly to staff in regard to these matters. There'll be an opportunity for that through the analysis and the report back.
Thank you. So no further questions? So can I get a mover to receive the delegations and oh, Councillor DeLong?
Recently with I believe it was Mr. Graywell, who had a question about the widening. The widening from, sorry, actually, never mind.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dillon. Can I get a motion to receive the delegations and report? Councillor Wollens, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Now, members of committee, we have to go back to item 4.1, as there have been persons wishing to delegate. So that requires committee to reopen this matter. Need a 2/3 vote. All in, okay, carried. And we have, so I would suggest before the people speaking that we allow city staff to come forward and make a presentation on item 4.1. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Bernie Steiger, I'm Manager in Development Services. The planner on this file is actually Himanshu Katyal. He's not in attendance at the moment, so I'll cover off and give a brief overview of this application. This relates to the Calcis Community School located on Maitland Avenue. The application before you is a city-initiated application intended to limit the number of occupants at the Calcis Community School itself. The maximum number of occupants was previously agreed to as part of an OMB settlement related to the site plan application. The occupancy reference will help ensure that the school does not have more student enrollment than what was identified in the traffic studies submitted with the site plan application. So as an insurance or a protection measure for us as a municipality to ensure that there's a regulatory aspect, that the plan that's was approved in the operation of the site meets the expectations in the studies that were submitted in conjunction with it. So in that regard, the maximum occupancy loads as agreed to between the school and the city were 1,060 persons for the current building and 13 portable classrooms. And then in the future, 1,170 persons for a future expanded building and 6 portable classrooms. So as part of this slide presentation, this is a graphic or a site plan of the approved site plan. It shows the circulation patterns on the property and the related portables and so forth. So just wanted to also give a bit of a background on the process that has brought us to this point here. First, in September 2012, the community school placed 6 portable classrooms on the site for which building permits were obtained. Later on in 2013, 4 additional portable classrooms were placed on the site without site plan approval and building permits. Subsequent to that, in August, the building division issued orders to comply. And then in November, the school submitted a site plan application to permit 7 portables and construct the first and second story addition to the existing school. Further on, in September, or in the summer of 2014, 3 more portable classrooms were placed on the site without site plan approval and building permits. And then subsequent to that, in part of the process, the application for site plan approval was refused by city staff and then was subsequently appealed by the applicant to the OMB. And in March 14th, through mediations, a settlement was reached between the parties that included improvements to the site plan or to the site related to traffic circulation, portable location, and other site works. And then it was also subject to a number of other conditions related to how the operation of the school and so forth. And a site plan agreement was entered into between the parties. So as part of that agreement and as part of the settlement, it was agreed that the city would proceed with a bylaw amendment to put in place within the zoning bylaw the aforementioned limits. And hence, in order to do that, we're here tonight with as part of this process, required under the Planning Act to undertake a public meeting. So just in terms of the general document status, the official plan designates lands as residential and open space on Schedule A. The amendments to these through the official plan is not required. Further, within the secondary plan, the lands are designated elementary school within the Bram-Lee secondary plan, and in that regard, an amendment to that plan is not required. And then with respect to zoning bylaw, there is an institutional 1 zone, and as part of this proposal, it would be to initiate and add a special section, which would then include the enrollment or the occupation limits that we've spoken to. So with regard to the process from here on forward, we're holding the public meeting tonight to obtain input from members of the public. Afterwards, we'll continue our review to make sure this application is consistent with the upper tier plans and conformity with the growth plan and so forth. Then subsequently come back to council, or to the planning committee actually, with a recommendation report for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For those who expressed interest in delegating, may I remind you to please sign in. If you've done so, please come forth to the podium. State your name and address for public record.
Good evening. I live in 26 Maitland Street, and my concern is the school is overcrowded already, and the traffic, it's chaos, especially from 8 in the morning to 10 o'clock, and from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 3:30, so nobody can go to the street at all. People, they park, the school was built, when I moved in that subdivision, I'm one of the first boys in that subdivision, and the school never existed there. Then they built the Catholic school board, they built the school. My grandchildren grew up in that school. Now what's this chaos? Now that school is built for one community. The community live all over in Brampton and in Caledon. In the morning, I count that, in that street, they go over 800 cars an hour and a half, not even in the highway. And they do double park on the curb lane on the northwest bound, because this middle and curve a little bit, go west and then go north. So they double park on one side. The road is 28 feet. They live just exactly maybe 14 feet one side. 2 people they cannot go through. My concern is a fireman, a fire truck got to go through. That time in the morning, it's going to be really, really, really bad, or some emergency, ambulance emergency. So it's I keep complaining for last 18 months. Nothing was. The city didn't do nothing at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have the next, Sina Falabella.
Hi, thank you. I live on Maitland as well, and when I first moved there in the 80s, it was, again, a community school, Catholic, and at the time, everyone walked their kids. The kids would walk to school. Very rarely you'd see a drop-off. And there was no problem with traffic at all whatsoever, because basically it was considered local school. When it was purchased, I would say, from the looks of it, 99% of the kids are dropped off. I would say even possibly even all the kids are dropped off. And that's why this Maitland Street has become total chaos. In fact, you pretty much can't get out of your driveway. I complained. They did install a stop sign at Mansion and Maitland. And it helped. That's, of course, if they abide to stop. Not everyone does. And it slowed down traffic somewhat, but it's still backed up. You can see all the backup on either side as well now. And then, of course, people turning onto Mansion Street. Currently, it's interesting, there is construction going on Mansion, which has added to the chaos, which, of course, it's naturally we have to have construction going on, fixing our roads and whatever they're doing. But just this morning, in fact, there was, I guess, a truck with equipment and whatever they're doing, just totally blocking Mansion Street and caused, again, further chaos. So anything that goes on adds to it, is basically what's going on. I totally find everyone in the neighborhood, it's too bad not everyone showed, but everyone is totally frustrated, especially during the times when you have the rush hours going on. If they're adding more to it, wow, I'm shocked. I'm even surprised it's gone to this far. In fact, it really should have, should have been halted prior. This is not an area where you can carry on total 100% drop-offs of children being dropped off by their parents. And again, I'm sure they come from all areas, not just Brampton, because it is a private school. This is not a location for a private school. Unfortunately, it didn't get stopped, and I don't know how it passed, but all the additional work that's been done to it has added more disruption to the community. So I certainly disagree with any further addition, if there is going to be. That's
Okay.
my point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And lastly, Ms. Maria Chiodo.
Good evening. Yes, I've been on Maitland since 1995. That school had a few kids. You walked them there, and once it was sold and the private school took over, in the beginning wasn't too bad, few students, a few buses. All of a sudden, every year these buses grew and the traffic grew. The traffic is chaos. You can't get in and out of your driveway. I have to park backwards in order for me to go out frontwards every night. And I have to leave 10-15 minutes early so I can get out of my driveway because they won't let you through. They'll block your driveway and everything. The street's never had as many potholes as it has right now. And that's with the amount of traffic. I'm sure that's done it. Because like I said, it's the last couple of years, all you get is all these potholes, a lot of traffic. It is really crazy. It's not safe for kids. There are still small kids on that street. My former neighbor, she moved away because she said, thank goodness it wasn't one of my kids. They got her cat. And she had 3 small kids. She moved because of this. And there are a lot of kids. I'm also concerned because when I have my grandkids over, I can't have them in the front. I have to have them in the backyard because if they run out in the street, I'm responsible for them while they're under my watch. I've called the school and said to them, tell the people to slow down, the parents, tell your school buses to slow down. Nothing. They block driveways, they go really fast. They had a police officer there all last week. I guess they paid him private because they know how crazy the traffic is. It can take me 10-15 minutes to get out of my street onto North Park. What did I do? I have to go up now the other way. If there's cars parked on this side and people coming down and I'm going up, they're supposed to wait, but no, I have to stop because they're going to hit me head on because they don't obey the rules of driving. I don't know how they got their license. I really don't, some people. And yeah, I think I'm surprised it went this far. I really am. The first year, like I said, it wasn't too bad. Why it grew so much, I don't know. Now they have all this construction going around there. There used to be this pathway that you can go from Madison through, to go through the park, because there's a park there. Well, guess what? That was closed. And all you see from this school with their construction is this piles and piles of dirt. You can't go through that park anymore. You can go the other way of the park. They've brought their fence so close to it that if you want to walk along there, you have to be careful you don't fall in the river. Like, why? I had a neighbor tell me that she didn't know, she's walking her dog. They told her, get off the property, it's private property. I wish she had come tonight. Like, what's private about it? Like, yes, it's private property, but what's wrong with someone walking through to get to the park? So they fenced everything in now. You know, and this, I'm surprised they have the amount of students they have because of that traffic. That our street, from a nice street, has now become probably worse than the 410 with the amount of traffic. You know, one time I tried to get in my driveway, I couldn't. The guy was blocking, the cars were blocking, and I waited. The guy says to me, oh, you can go, where? On the curve and on my grass? I have to get in the driveway. They don't care. He moves forward, the next car moves forward. And the buses are just as bad. They're buses. And the other buses from other schools respect the rules. And I also one day, and I wish the school bus had taken the license plate, I wish I did, I had no pen or whatever, had flashers on, and one of the parents zoomed down the street, past those lights. I was behind the bus. Now, what if that child was crossing the other way, going on the east side of Maitland? They would have gotten hit. That car did not stop. They do not stop. They don't, there's a stop sign in Madison and that. They want to go so fast because of this traffic that they won't even do the stop just to get out of the street. So you're getting like all kinds of dangerous stuff going on there. You know, and people parking on streets, bring the kids, they go inside for a while. People are trying to get through. And like the other gentleman said, yes, what if there's an emergency? Where are they going to go?
Okay, thank you.
It could be someone's life.
Sorry. Thank you very much. We have a 5-minute limit, so I thank you very much for your delegation today.
Okay.
So now I believe, is there anyone else that'd like to speak?
Hi,
Can you
I
state your
guess,
name and?
Yeah, my name is Tony Brooks and I live at 23 Maitland Street. And I'm appalled at what goes on here. The people before me have come and they've said exactly what I was going to say. And I'm telling you, councillors, there's going to be a big problem there. Somebody is going to get hurt, and somebody, when they're killed or maimed, then you all will wake up. This has to stop. And I'm too emotional to continue anymore, but I want this stopped. And I object to what's going on. And then they say they're going to build. Where are they going to build? Where are they going to build? I don't know where they're going to build. They're going to build at the side. They already have 960 people, and I heard them say 1,060. So before you know it, it'll be 2,000. This is the epitome of ridiculousness. This has to stop. And I hope, and I object to what's going on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So if there's no further delegations, and I believe our city solicitor has some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really for the purposes of clarification, because I understand with these applications that come forward to Planning Committee, it's not easy for members of the public to also to always understand exactly what it is that we're trying to achieve as we move forward. The application, the city-initiated application that's coming forward is to provide a cap on the occupancy for the site. Currently, the site is zoned for school, so the school is a permitted use on this site. There is no cap. The zoning that was put in place back in the 80s when the Catholic school was first constructed did not have a cap on the occupancy. So right now you have a use that is permitted without any sort of limit whatsoever in terms of the occupancy, and that of course is a concern because the site cannot handle the the traffic and so on that has been generated by the school and the way that it is operated. Okay, so one of the solutions, and I believe the report, and it was spoken to earlier, there was a site plan that came forward, there was negotiations and so on, mediation at the Ontario Municipal Board in order to address many of the concerns. You can see at 4.1-6, and it's up on the screen for everyone to see, some of the work that is being demanded of the school that has not been completed yet, that has been designed to take the traffic off of the street and to address many of the concerns that you've heard here today. But the purpose of the report that is before Planning Committee, and it's just a public meeting, and it's important to hear from members of the public for sure, but the purpose of the report today is to speak to a potential cap, a limit, so that this is not to allow for the expansion of the school, it's to prohibit the expansion of the school. This is to place a cap that does not currently exist on the school. And the school has agreed to that as part of the settlement that they arrived at with the school at the OMB. Understanding the work in terms of the site plan has not been completed yet, it's underway, which again creates additional stress on the community. Hopefully when all of that is done, the complaints that you're hearing about today will be ameliorated. But in the meantime, just to stress again, the application that is before, that is actually, the information report that has been brought forward today is to start the ball rolling to place a limit or a cap on the occupancy on this site for which the school will not be able to exceed.
Thank you for the clarification. I think it was an important clarification. Now, members of committee, Councillor Fortini.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to go back to my questions. I'm glad you clarified that, because we did have a town hall at the time, and that was part of the agreement at the town hall. If they do this, we eliminate the cars, they cannot get no more students. There was letters sent out in the area, they were going to build a second floor, wrong phone number, there was so much confusion. And to get those cars off the road, this is the only way we could do it. I know now it's winter, the construction's still there. We also stopped the Maitland this summer for doing the asphalt because of this. And now, coming September, we're gonna have that road redone. So it's still gonna cause problem because a lot of people complain about the potholes. And but I know on one side where the school is, there's gonna, and I remember the report well, there's 412 parking spots. And part of the agreement was that no cars were gonna be parked on the road, but of course, at this time, the construction's all on site, they still have to dig the back, they can't do asphalt, they can't do concrete, and we have to put up with it for a little bit longer. And I think the expiry date was September 1st, they have to have all this completed. So there is no second floor, there is no addition, and that was the whole idea, is the cap on the town hall, and that's what we agreed at the residents, to give them this, and that's what we had. So there was a lot of miscommunication with all those letters going out from a certain resident saying they're gonna build a second floor and all that, and they kind of riled up the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I wonder if we could start really looking at how we can build the relationship between the community and the school. And I know there's been a lot of work done by Councillor Fortini in the past to kind of, work on that specifically. And in the meantime, with the Safe Schools Committee and the traffic that we have, I wonder if we can really focus on building some relationships and start looking at what we can do with the current situation while we're waiting for the work to be done. I'm just curious to know, with the driveways and that drive around, just a couple of things. How many cars are we realistically going to be able to get off the road during the kiss and ride time with the two driveways? I'm assuming one's for buses and one's for cars. How many cars are we realistically going to be able to divert off the road to park in there during the time where parents are to wait for that bell?
And through you, Mr. Chair, so we do have a traffic impact study that was really approved through the board matter, where the traffic engineers representing both the school and the city were ultimately agreeable to the design that you see before you now, and which was approved through the site plan and at the board. Those are some additional details that we can provide to you just as we're coming back as well. Given that tonight is for the public meeting purposes, to hear from residents about the matter and from yourselves as far as items of clarification, we can definitely bring that back for you.
Okay, through you, Chair, I think it'd be helpful for the public to also know what the possibilities are going to be, and hopefully that can help, instill some hope that that some of the cars are going to get off the road and decrease some of the stress that is happening in the morning and the afternoon times as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vicente?
Through you, Chair, to staff. 1,000 students on a school that sits on a 5-acre property, is that typical of what you might see, for example, for a high school? Anyone who can answer that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what I would offer is that secondary schools with numbers similar to what we see here, they would typically have a larger area. In this case, the site is not really afforded the size. We do have a school that'll tell you that they operate in a prestige or a specialty way that do bring students in from a larger area. They do have the enrollment that they have. They do operate a little differently than the public school in that size standpoint. So for those reasons, we went through some extra steps towards the design that you see here with the large looping paths for both the buses and the cars to get all those vehicles really to the greatest extent off of the road. So a little different in that respect.
So based on your review of how the school does its operations, and given the size of the building, you feel that having approximately 1,000 occupants in the building is acceptable?
Yeah, sorry. Councillor
Just ask
Vicente,
the
I
question.
appreciate the question, but then after, I think it leads us into debate. So maybe an
understand.
opportunity for you to speak with staff.
Perhaps I'll just word different. So we've reviewed the numbers and they're acceptable.
That's right. Through yourself, Mr. Chairman. So through the Ontario Municipal Board hearing, there was complete consideration on the traffic matters and the design as shown here by both traffic consultants, engineers from representing both the applicant and the city. And it was ultimately decided that, yes, we are supportive of the matter through the mediation provided by the board.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Sorry, just a question of clarification. Where is it? So there's two options that are provided to the school. Is that correct? When you get 1060 persons in a gross floor of 2392 and 1170 with a gross floor area of 3827.
That's right. And so specifically to the matter there, as noted on page 4.1-3 of the report, yes, there is a 1A and B reference to the number of occupants that would be applied to the site as a maximum number. And so 1A does reflect, identify 1,060 persons, and that would apply to the current school that is on site now, together with those portables that are currently there as well. The additional number being identified as 1B being 1,170, that is a number of individuals that would apply for a maximum occupancy if and when there is an expansion to the school that is to be reviewed and approved through a site plan. That application is not with us at this point in time, but it does contemplate the number, the intent of the school to expand, but in a future application of that type being reviewed, staff will be, in the same manner as we were on the previous site plan, looking towards ensuring that all of the traffic implications are properly dealt with and vehicles are really operating properly on the subject site.
Right, I do hope that, like as Councillor Williams was saying, that there can be some type of relationship built. There is obviously an issue that the residents have observed with traffic. There was, I guess, the appeal made by them, which allowed them to go through with this. But at the same time, they are providing a good service in the fact that they're the top-ranked school in Ontario. So I'm hopeful, again, just to go off what Councilor William was saying, that there can be some type of relationship built going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Our city solicitor has a comment.
So through yourself, Mr. Chair, again, for purposes of clarification, we've spoken about improved relationships with the community. And it should be noted as part of the settlement, and I've had discussions with the clerk's office as well as our planning staff. Part of the settlement with the school was that a community liaison committee would be established. As has been noted with most public schools, you have that infrastructure already in place with trustees and so on, but with a private school that doesn't exist. And so what we tried to do through the settlement was recreate that sort of committee or communication type process. And so we will be working with the clerks group and with the school, and we'll reach out to the local councillors as well, as we try to piece together a process, and the school has agreed to this, whereby we can bring the community, the city, and the school together so that these concerns can be addressed in a forum that supports solutions. Okay, and one other thing as well, Mr. Chair, if I could, through yourself, there was some discussion about options in terms of the bylaw. Okay, the bylaw provides for a cap, which is the 900 and change, sorry, the 1,060 persons cap. Okay, that is a total occupancy cap for the building. That includes students, teachers, and so on. So the number in terms of students is actually less than that. That is a number that is intended to include everyone. When you look at the B, right, that's not necessarily an expansion, it's a removal of some of the portables and a replacement or a reconstruction of some of the site to accommodate those students within the main building. Okay, so that number can go up, but it's if you look at the bylaw, it's subject to some strict requirements that would have to come back to council before that would ever be permitted. Okay, and the site would need to be able to support that occupancy load. And that's in the bylaw, and that sort of restriction does not exist currently.
Thank you, City Solicitor. So no further comments. So may I have a motion to receive the delegations and staff report? Moved by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And I will have pass this over to City Clerk to explain another change in our agenda.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. During the approval of the consent motion this evening, the Chair asked for a motion in regard to item 7.1, which was adding that additional recommendation 4 that I read out to committee. And Councillor Pelleschi spoke, but it was interpreted as he was speaking to move item 7.1 with that recommendation 4. That, in fact, was not Councillor Pelleschi's intent. He was seeking clarification on another item, 7.3. So with the indulgence of committee, there's two options. One, committee can remove item 7.1 from consent to have a debate on the additional recommendation that staff have identified for the subdivision agreement, or committee can decide to have a vote again on the consent motion with 7.1 with the amended recommendation 4 added, so Councillor Pelleschi can indicate his approval or opposition to that particular item.
So I believe I will.
It's easier to just remove it from consent.
Yes, so I will just remove this from consent. Item 7.1, or I have here 7.3.
7.3, Mr. Chair, was the item that Councillor Pelleschi was asking about,
Okay.
and it was something that was addressed during approval of the agenda with the consent
okay.
motion.
So I will suggest, do we need to vote on removing 7.1? Okay. 7.1, yes. All in,
I'm not asking for it to be removed. I'm giving the area councilors the opportunity to be added.
okay. So 7.1, we're going to remove it from consent agenda. As explained by the city clerk.
So Councillor Pelleschi, do you wish to speak to it? Or?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm removing my name from moving item 7.1, and I'm giving the opportunity for the area councilors to move that item. I'm not asking for it to be removed from consent.
So, Mr. Chair, if either of the area councilors, Councillor Singer, Councillor Dillon, are moving 7.1 with the added recommendation 4 that I read out, and then to keep it into consent, that would be a proper motion, and committee can take the vote again.
Okay, as explained by City Clerk, moved by Councillor Singh. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to, I believe, item 7.6.
Mr. Chair, 7.6 was added to consent.
Okay, that's right. And now we are on,
The next item would be referred matters, but there are no referred matters for this
Matters.
committee yet, as this is the first meeting, so it would be correspondence item 12.1.
okay, so we have correspondence. Do any members have questions or comments regarding correspondence? No. Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence? Moved by Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Councillor question period. Do any members have questions of staff regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Development Committee? Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question through you to the clerk's office for referred matters list. If a member of the public was looking at the agenda today, they would assume that there is a referred matters list. Is it easier if there are no referred matters that we put a place in the note to say so, or is this a kind of a pre-populated item on the agenda to make it more efficient for staff to print off agendas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intent is it's a pre-populated. It is a standing item that's listed in the procedure bylaw, and presumably it will be populated through the course of this term. And the referred matters list is a consolidated list that not only includes Planning and Development Committee, but also City Council and Committee of Council. And to a point that you've raised earlier, we'll be undertaking improvements to how the referred matters list is found on the city's website, because it is rather difficult at this point in time to find it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Palashi. We move on to public question period. Are there any members of the public that have any questions regarding any recommendation made by committee at today's meeting? Nope. So we move on. Our last business item is adjournment. Thank you, members, for your respectful consideration recommendations today. Today's recommendations will be presented to City Council for approval at its next regular meeting on January 23rd. Committee is next scheduled to meet Monday, January 28th at 1 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Councillor Williams, all in favor? Carried, and have yourselves a good night. Thank you.